creative and transformative in how you use this power within. That in itself creates lots of conflicts and resistance because their desires are not manifesting as quickly as they would love to have. Where people were faced with some severe challenges and they were able to overcome them. So the stories are going to be of interest to you if you want to change your income, to create more opportunity for you in your career, and how to magnetize the pleasurable things in life to you. Now, do you know and are you aware of where your true power lies? And if you do, are you using it effectively? Too often I see people struggling with using the power of their subconscious mind. Welcome to another episode with me, Fazila Bijo. On this channel, I help you understand the rules of reality and how to master the game of life. And believe me, this truly is a game. When you know the rules, you will know how to play. You have everything in life that you desire, right? When you look at your life, what thoughts and feelings do you have about how your life is currently? Are current experiences and your reality getting you down? Are you aware that you hold the keys to your kingdom? That any of the blocks and misalignments that you're seeing in your life are actually coming from you? You're going to hear me say this throughout my videos is just know what it is that you desire in life. I want you to become aware. You may actually go ahead and write that down. What is it that you desire? Keep it top of mind as we go through this video. You understand that you have created a story about what you want, and that story may very well be limiting you from getting and having that which you desire. For this week's stories are for you if you want to change your level of income, you want to change something in your business, you want to improve your career, and you also want to manifest some of those pleasurable things in life. Keep in mind, when you go through the stories, how will you use these stories to better yourself at creating your desires? How will you use these stories to become better at setting up your imaginal scenes? How will you use these stories to manifest a better life for yourself? I'd love to know. Please drop those comments below. This week, I'm drawing on teachings from chapter 11 from the Law and the Promise called The Potter, which is about your imagination. As Neville says, the world is clay and you are the potter. Just as a potter can reshape any discarded clay into a new form, so too can you refashion any events and experiences in your life into something greater. Neville Goddard states that human and divine imagination are one power, and they are different only in the degree of expression. The degree of expression speaks to the level to which you are able to express that desire as being true for you, and the degree to which you believe that desire is true for you. Divine mind, there is no such thing as loss or lack or I do not have. The human mind that chooses to believe in the state of lack of wealth or health or love. Keeping this in mind, remembering and understanding then you are the potter and the world is clay, because what you fashion in your mind is what you're going to be seeing as a creation in your life. So when you have a desire in mind, be very clear. When a potter looks at a piece of clay, he is already inspired in terms of what the outcome will be. So if he wants to create a vase, or he wants to create a lamp or an urn, that is a vision he will hold as he molds and shapes this clay. So too are you as a potter in imagination. You hold in your imagination the vision of what your life is going to be shaped as. You hold in your imagination what the events and experiences are going to be molded into. And those come from what you think, but more importantly, how you feel about what you think. You must set to work bringing your visions to life, because you must live as the person. So as the potter, you must effectively harness the power of your imagination. What we do comes from what we imagine, what we assume to be true. The things that we create as experiences show us what we've been thinking about. It shows us what we've been molding in our imagination, what we've been shaping in our imagination, what our true thoughts and feelings are about, because your subconscious mind is what shapes your reality. The reality we see is the consciousness we've been occupying. And how we do this is the following. In this chapter, Neville says imagination creates, conserves, and transforms. So it is quite, this perspective on imagination is actually quite profound and it's multifaceted. So let's look very quickly what he talks about in terms of imagination creating. This is the fundamental creative force of the universe. When you go into your imaginal state, you are actually stepping into the quantum field, the unified field, the universe, energy, whatever you call it, God. Now, what Neville is saying here is that through the focus of our imagination, but also through our awakened imagination, we bring realities into existence. What we transmit, I've talked about this in my previous video, you are sending out a frequency that connects into all that is, the substance of the universe, what God is, the omnipresent substance of everything. Your imagination, through molding your through having a vision and having this desire, sends that frequency, sends, you are holding the vibration, but the frequency you emit is what is sending out a message into consciousness, into the greater consciousness, into the God self, to the higher self. And you are putting out a signal that says, divine mind, give form and experience to this desire I would love to have in my life. And so your thoughts and feelings are going to shape your external world. Now, imagination is also conservative. When Neville talks about imagination being conservative, he says that it is that part of imagination that relies on memory. This part of imagination preserves and it reuses the past experiences and images. So if you do not change your past experiences, if you are not revising those undesirable experiences from your past, your imagination is going to reuse that. It's going to see that as being true and real for you. So this is a very strong case for you to be revising. And how do you revise? You rewrite your day. When you get to the end of the day, if you haven't watched any of my past videos, I have a playlist for revision. If you do not revise every day before going to bed, you are going to imprint whatever experiences you had that day, and your imagination is going to reuse that as the basis for what it believes to be true for you. And by the way, I have a masterclass on revision. There's 8 hours worth of training on this, and you can actually do this at your own pace and in your own time. But I do suggest that you master revision. Learn what it is to revise effectively, because that is the basis for everything in terms of how we manifest and how we create our reality, and to become a skilled creator and manifester in terms of the game of life. The reason that imagination is conservative is that it is going to rely on what I said, its continuity and stability in terms of our mental landscape. The neural networks will wire according to what we believe and assume to be true. You must actually learn how to rewire the subconscious mind so that you are able to shape your external reality in accordance with what is implanted into the subconscious mind. Imagination is transformative because this is where the true and real power lies. So this is when imagination goes beyond mere memory and is able to reinterpret or alter existing factor experiences. What I've spoken about with what imagination conserves, you can actually transform if it's an undesirable experience, or you want to experience something that you've never experienced before. In terms of these three aspects of imagination, what Neville highlights here is that there are different roles in terms of imagination and how we can use it to our advantage. So it can be a tool for creating new realities, to preserve the past, and to transform any of those undesirable experiences so that you can achieve and manifest all of those desires that you'd love to have, all of those desires you'd love to experience. The transformative aspect is particularly powerful because it's going to allow you the ability to mold, to reshape, to refashion your reality. because it's allowing you and it's enabling you. When you use this tool, you can mentally reshape your inner world and transform your inner landscape on the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects in order to create that which you desire as your life. If you want to reshape your reality and your world, use the transformative aspect of imagination. Bringing together your desire, persisting in your belief, and living from the end is how you're going to utilize the transformative aspect of imagination. It allows us to transform our inner world, mentally reshape our outer world through persistent belief, using the power of your visualization together with the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Bring your desires into your reality. So to this end, the purpose of life is to creatively fulfill our desires. And what is a desire? Desire is an awareness of something we lack or that which we need in order to make our life enjoyable. It is so important to have a clear understanding of desires because the purpose of life is to creatively fulfill our desires. Without desires, we really wouldn't be able to effectively handle the challenges that we face constantly. And not just that, what we need and how we can make our lives better. The way to also recognize a desire is there's always a personal gain. The greater the anticipated gain, the more intense the desire. So what Neville says is have a burning desire. If you have a desire that is very mild and it's not something that gets you really excited, or it's not something that you really want to achieve in life, you're not going to be able to bring that intense feeling in order to bring it into imagination so that you can see and feel and live as though your desire is real. Even when our desire is for another, we could be you wanting a family member to be successful in what they do or having a better state of health. Even then, a desire for another is you still having a desire. It's one that you want to see come to fulfillment. To attain our desires, we must imagine scenes which implies the fulfillment of that desire. You must enact that scene in your imagination, even if it's temporarily. That scene must have sufficient feeling like joy, satisfaction within it for you to feel that scene is natural and for you to feel that that desire has already been accomplished. It's like a child playing dress up and playing queen. That child is fully immersed in their imagination. They play the role of being the queen. And you must imagine that you already are what you'd like to be. You play out the scene in your imagination first, and it's not as a spectator, but as the actor. To be in your imagination is think from the end. You're going to enact the end, which is to create that reality. Taking the scene of someone who wants to be married, it is the version of reality that they want to live in. So to be effective and to live wisely, to be aware of what we are imagining at any time in terms of our desires. Remember, the world is clay and your imagination is the potter. So you should always imagine an end that has value or there's a promise for you. To imagine faithfully and to imagine wisely. Your inner actions must correspond to the actions that you would physically perform when this desire is already in your reality. So in this case, your inner action might be having a ring on your finger. It would imply that you're married. Taking the vows on your wedding day. Your inner action could also be you are addressed as Mrs. So-and-so in the case of a woman. Your inner actions in imagination must be from that version of the person who has already achieved success and fulfillment along that desire. And so we're going to look at the stories that are going to help you to set up your imaginal scenes for success. The first story is about the artist, and she says, ever since I entered into the art field, I had enjoyed doing sketches and paintings for children's rooms. She says, though, she had been discouraged by friends and advisors who were more experienced than her in the field. She said they liked her work and they admired her talent, but they said she would not get recognition nor be paid for this type of work. Now, a very important point here is when you have a desire, Be very aware. Do not share that desire before you have a strong feeling of it being real and true for you. Neville says, speak to no man about your desire. And the reason here is because when we share what we are dreaming about, and someone else, the person that you're speaking to, doesn't have the same vision, doesn't have the same burning desire and the feeling of satisfaction or joy that they will accomplish it, they cannot see the possibility. And so they may introduce doubt. So until such time that you are really, really solid, if you only once you have anchored the feeling of naturalness, that desire that you've lived with in imagination is already done. In fact, by that time, you will not need to speak to someone else about it. So if you have a need to share, if you have a need to speak to someone else in terms of your desire, I'm going to recommend that you rather write it down and you do some introspection in terms of, for what reason would I want to share this right now? So the lady says, somehow I felt I would achieve this. But her question was, but how? Common thing that happens with people is they want to actually they want to know, how is this going to happen? So at this point, I will caution you, when the how questions comes up, you must remind yourself, the how is not up to me. With persistent belief that you go into imagination and you feel the satisfaction that your desire is complete and it is achieved, because we know that from other teachings, creation is finished. There are multiple versions of reality. They exist as a potential to until you make a choice along the way that will narrow down the potentialities. You could have a reality in which you are married. You could have a reality in which you stayed single. You could have a reality in which you meet your partner right now. You could have a reality where you meet your partner later on in life. It is dependent on your desire and what you'd love to have. So when you are making the choice of refashioning your current reality, what you're doing is bringing into your awareness now, into imagination, and you are setting about the instruction into the quantum, into the universe, that this is the reality I now most would love to attune to and to have. She says to Neville, somehow I felt I would, but how? Then last fall, I heard your lectures and I read your books, and I decided to let my imagination create the reality I desired. This is what I did daily. I imagined I was in a gallery and there was a great deal of excitement about me. On the walls hung my art, only mine. It was a one-woman show, and I saw red stars on many of the pictures. That would indicate they had been sold. So the red stars, an indication, an implication that her art had sold. And always, always, always remember to bring into your scene something that implies that your desire is already complete. So just before Christmas, I did a mobile for a friend who showed it in turn to a friend of hers who owns an art import shop in Pasadena. He expressed a desire to meet me, so I took a few samples of my work along. When he looked at the very first painting, he said he would like to give me a one-woman show in spring. That night of the opening, April 17th, an interior decorator came and liked and commissioned me to do a collage for a little boy's room, which will appear in the September issue of Good Housekeeping for the 1961 House of the Year. Later, during the show, another decorator comes and admires her work so much, and he says he would like to arrange for her to meet the right interior decorators and the right owners of the galleries who would buy and display her work properly. She says, incidentally, the show was a financial success for the owner of the gallery, as it was for her. She says the interesting thing that came about was that seemingly those three men came out of the blue. She said, certainly I made no effort during the time of my imagining to contact anyone. But now I am getting recognition and I have a market for my work. And now I know without a shadow of a doubt that there is no when you seriously apply this principle that imagining creates reality. She envisions the end. Her artwork is hanging up in a gallery and she sees the little red stars that imply her work was sold. Now, from the implication that her work is sold, she now has these people who show up, and they in turn are impressed by her work, and more opportunities open up for her. If you want to see a change in your business or your career, set up an imaginal scene where it will imply that you have achieved success. What would success look like? What would the outcome be? And you must bring that into your imaginal scene. That's all you need to do. You don't need to be looking for clients. You don't need to be looking for contractors. She didn't need to look for interior decorators, etc. All she did was enact an imaginal scene of the end of her desire. This is the story about the lady who decides to dress up and play queen. She imaginatively played queen by being who she wanted to be in her imagination, and she became the true actor in the theater. Her desire was to attend a performance by a famous pantomimist in one of the largest theaters in her city. The intimate nature of the art. She wanted to sit in the orchestra, but she didn't even have the price of a balcony ticket. And so what she does is, being determined to have this pleasure for herself, in her imagination, she falls asleep watching the performance. She sees herself sitting in the orchestra center seat, and she hears applause as the curtain rises and the artist comes on stage. She says the next day, the day of the matinee performance, her financial condition hadn't changed. She had exactly $1.37 in her purse. She knew she had to use $1 to buy gas for her car, which would leave her with 37 cents. However, within herself, she knew that she had faithfully slept in the feeling of that performance, and she knew she would be in the theater. She finds $1 bill and 45 cents in change hidden in the purse that she used to the opera previously. So she grins to herself, and she realized she has gas money. She says, standing before the ticket window, my confidence dwindled as I gazed at the prices, and I saw $3.75 for the orchestra seats. She says, feeling dismay, she turned away quickly. She walked across the street to a cafe for a cup of tea. She spends 16 cents on her tea before remembering that she saw the price of balcony tickets on the ticket window list. And when she counts her money, she finds that she has $1.66 left. She goes back to the theater and she buys the cheapest seat available, which cost her $1.55. She goes through to the entrance, and the usher tears her ticket and says to her, upstairs, please. While the performance was about to begin, she ignores the usher's instructions. She walks to the main floor of the ladies' restroom. Now, she is still determined to sit in the orchestra section. She says, I sat down, I closed my eyes, and I kept my inward sight. So in her imagination, she still holds the vision of seeing herself sitting in the orchestra seat, seeing the stage from where she is. At that moment, she says, a group of women walked into the restroom and they were all talking at once. But she only heard one conversation as a woman who was speaking to her companion says, but I had waited and waited until the last moment. Then she called and said she couldn't make it. I would have given her ticket away, but it's too late now. Not realizing it, I handed the usher both tickets and he tore them in half before I could stop him. Now, the lady says, I almost laughed aloud. Getting up, I walked over to the lady and I asked her if I might use the extra ticket she had instead of the balcony seat I had bought. She was charming and kindly invited me to join her party. The ticket she handed to me was for the orchestra section, center seat, 6 rows from the stage. I sat in that seat only moments before the curtain rose on a performance I had witnessed the night before from that seat in my imagination. Another important point that is raised in the story is to have persistent belief that your desired end, that the imaginal scene you have constructed, when you have felt it natural, that nothing deters you from having your desired end. Do not give up. You are the one that must persist in reshaping reality and knowing that what you have seen in imagination is yours. The next story has to do with how a businessman changes his fortunes. He says for some months, sales had been steadily declining and he found himself in a financial jam. But he also makes mention that there were thousands of other small businessmen who were thinking along the same lines, that the country was in a minor recession. He says he was badly in debt and he needed at least $3,000 immediately. His auditors advised him to close the business and salvage what he could. He says, instead, I turned to my imagination. I knew your teaching, but I had never actually attempted to solve any problem in this manner. I was frankly skeptical of the entire idea that imagination can create reality. But I was also desperate, and desperation forced me to test your teaching. I imagine my office receiving $4,000 in remittances due. He says this money would have come from new orders, as his accounts receivable were practically non-existent. But this seemed far-fetched for him, as he hadn't received much in sales during the last 4 months or so. Nevertheless, he says, I kept my imaginal picture of receiving this amount of money steadily before me for 3 days. Early on the fourth morning, a customer he had not heard from in months called him on the telephone and asked him to come and see him personally. And he was told to take a quotation he had previously given to him for machinery that was needed at the factory. This quotation was already months old, so he takes it along with him and he says, I wrote out the order which he signed, but I saw no immediate help for me in the transaction, as the equipment he wanted would take 4 to 6 months for factory delivery. And of course, my customer did not have to pay for it until delivered. I thanked him for the order and I rose to leave. He stopped me at the door and he handed me a check for little over $4,000, saying, I want to pay for the merchandise now in advance for tax purposes, you know. You don't mind? No, I didn't mind. I realized what had happened the moment I took that check in my hands. Within 3 days, my imaginal act had done for me what I had not been able to do in months of desperate financial shuffling. I know now that imagination could have brought me $40,000 into my business just as easily as $4,000. So he stayed true to the imaginal scene for 3 days. In the story that he relays, there are points at which 3D reality does not look to conform to his imaginal scene. But imagination has ways you know not of. So do not seek the how. Stay true to the end and only the end. Do not be swayed by what is going on in your 3D reality. When you stay faithful to the end, that faith is saying, I have belief in the unseen. Where is the unseen? It's in imagination. Unlike the potter, you are not working with visible clay. You are working in your imagination. You are working with your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. And you're also working with your inner conversations. Your inner conversations should be aligned with your desires, your thoughts, and your feelings. Make sure you do not deviate from what you have constructed in your imaginal scene along the lines of the reality that you wish to be living in. Such as the power of your imagination, you can create and uncreate events. Revision is powerful beyond means because it's going to help you not only shape your reality from undesirable to desirable, but it's also the foundational aspects for how you can really create and manifest. If you have any questions about this week's video, please leave your comments and questions down below and I will gladly respond to them. And remember to become a master at playing the game of life. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.